We were joined by the writer and broadcaster Leslie Riddoch and the editor of Brexit Central website, Jonathan Isaby. Jonathan Isaby, you're pro-hard Brexit. You will want us out, no half measures, no deals, and certainly not a deal for Scotland. That's what you want to hear from the Prime Minister tomorrow, is that correct?
Well, I take issue with your phrase hard Brexit. Hard Brexit is a phrase that's been invented by people who voted Remain, who are trying to paint Brexit as some kind of negative thing, versus what they call soft Brexit, which is basically no Brexit. What I want to see the Prime Minister announcing tomorrow, and I have a great expectation that she will, is to set out an overarching strategy for where she wants the country to go as an independent nation and how our ties will be loosened, indeed completely broken formally with the European Union in terms of things like the single market and the customs union, but making clear that we want to have friendly relations with our neighbours and that there are various things that the EU does that we will continue to be able to cooperate with them on too.
And Leslie, on the basis of what we're hearing, there is not likely to be a special deal for Scotland, is there?
No, there isn't. I mean, it looks like there's going to be all sorts of deals for other people. I mean, we've got the secret deal with Nissan. We've got the looks like a deal for the City of London. Looks like a deal for some of the soft fruit manufacturers and producers around East Anglia who generally vote Tory. We might end up with a special deal for Ireland. Surely there would have to be one to avoid the kind of catastrophe that there could be there if there was a reimposition of a hard border. Do you know there's special deals galore here for a hard Brexit, which suggests, as well as the crashing of the pound today to levels as low as the 1980s, which even the horrific prospect of independence in Scotland didn't manage to promote, all of this together doesn't sound as if the money men are actually tremendously confident about the prospects of what we're going to hear from Theresa May tomorrow.
Jonathan, what about that point? And in particular, the idea that there are deals there for the City of London typically. Is that fair?
Well, no one's got any kind of deal at the moment. It's a blank piece of paper, and the Prime Minister is going to take us forward as of tomorrow as to where things are going. People are saying that there should be a special situation for Scotland. I simply don't see how that can happen in terms of Scotland staying in the single market, which is obviously what Nicola Sturgeon has been pushing for. We voted as a United Kingdom in that referendum, and the country as a whole voted to leave the European Union.
Is it meaningful at all that Scotland has any kind of say then? I mean, are we any status other than a random group of 5.3 million people living in the north of Britain? I mean, does the fact we have our own parliament and we are a nation within the Treaty of Union, does that mean anything?
Of course it means something, and the Prime Minister again has made it utterly clear that all the devolved nations are going to be consulted and spoken to and debated with throughout this whole process. But at the end of the day,
and there hasn't been a single word said about what's going to be said tomorrow.
Our relationship with the European Union...
Let Jonathan finish his point.
At a UK level. Our relationship with the European Union is negotiated at a UK level, and you can't get away from that. At the end of the day, the United Kingdom voted to leave. The Supreme Court has a different opinion.
The Supreme Court sees the idea of Parliament as being something that includes the devolved parliaments of the United Kingdom. Now, until that is reversed, and it looks like the UK government will lose that one too, the concept of consultation is not just something that's sort of wafty and can be pushed aside. This is something that must happen and has not happened, and gives us every clue we need about what's to come ahead of us.
But Leslie, what about that point that it was a UK vote? Scotland voted to remain part of the UK. The UK has voted to leave the EU.
Yeah, but if you look at where we're moved to at the moment, the politics of this are now quite interesting. I mean, we've heard that if there is to be a hard Brexit, as looks likely to be, Philip Hammond, the Chancellor, said very recently that the prospect is of a low-tax UK with an American free trade agreement that could be a magnet for businesses wanting to escape regulation and tax. Have Scots voted for that at any point, whether within the European referendum, at Westminster elections or at Scottish ones? This is like the kind of bargain basement, as Jeremy Corbyn's described it, that just lets us hand over, lock, stock and barrel, all the regulation, all the sort of social control, all the trade union rights that we've worked over decades and centuries to achieve to create a kind of market that must live within society. And what we're turning into is a society that just has to fit into the market. That's not something Scots have ever signed up for.
Jonathan.
Leslie there is scaremongering of the highest order and making all kinds of suggestions that things are going to be abolished or got rid of, which are simply not on the agenda. The fact is
that was just a quote from the Chancellor.
People on your side during the referendum were predicting all kinds of doom and gloom if the country voted to leave. It did vote to leave, and since the referendum, over the last 7 months or so, every single projection has been more optimistic than before the referendum. Just today, the IMF upgraded its growth forecast for the UK this year yet again. Unemployment continues to come down, the economy continues to grow, the FTSE is at record highs. There's all kinds of reasons to be incredibly optimistic about our future outside the European Union.
And Britain is still the most unequal society in the developed world. We have the NHS at breaking point. At what cost?
Let us move on slightly. And Leslie, do you think this means, therefore, if, as we expect, Theresa May will speak of a hard Brexit, I take Jonathan's point about it is Brexit, will that mean that IndyRef 2 is inevitable?
Well, I think it does. Partly politically, because Nicola Sturgeon has manoeuvred herself that way. She's said that she's got independence as an option on the table if she's not included. And up to this point, Theresa May snubbed every opportunity to have any kind of talks. At Prime Minister's questions, she made it pretty clear she hadn't actually read the submission, the only bit of document that there's been so far that was put her way by the Scottish Government. So I can't see how Nicola Sturgeon can have independence as an option on the table and then politically just take it off when eventually her bluff's been called, if you like. But more than that, I think a lot of people will look at the proposition that's being shaped by a right-wing government whose idea of a great trade deal is to do some kind of deal with Donald Trump, whose idea of success is to have Michael Gove standing with his thumbs in the air, for all the air, like an idiot actually, standing there with a man who scares most Scots actually. And if that's the prospect, if that's the future, I think that makes an awful lot of people rethink where they want to be.
Jonathan, just finally, if a separate deal could be struck for Scotland within the UK's Brexit, is that something that you would have any issue with, especially if it meant that Scotland remained within the UK?
I simply don't think it's feasible for Scotland to remain in the single market when the rest of the UK is leaving the single market, and the fact remains that we voted as a United Kingdom to leave the European Union, and that just simply stands. And as regards Donald Trump, we don't need to get into personalities of who leads countries around the world. The fact is that the President-elect of the United States wants to do a free trade deal with this country. This is something that we should be celebrating and should be excited about, and it will be the first of very many. But in order to do those free trade deals, we have to be outside the customs union, we have to be outside the single market in order to be in control of our own destiny once again. And
I'm afraid time has beaten us, and that's where we'll have to leave it. Jonathan, Leslie, thank you both for joining us in Scotland tonight.
Thank you.